Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Hash, where we bring you the latest and greatest in crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell. We have the usual gang here today. We've got Will Foxley, Zach Stewart, Jen Stanasi, and we're going to be diving into some giant news, what's going down with this Bitfinex hack and the people that were arrested. I'm going to hand this straight over to Zach for you to fill in the details here.
Yeah, major news. We teased it at the beginning of the show yesterday when this was just breaking, and it was crazy ever thereafter. Now, back in 2016, there was a hack that at the time was worth $71 million in Bitcoin. That swelled to a hack that is now worth $4.5 billion in Bitcoin. And two people who are at the heart of that hack, who are accused of laundering some of those funds, were arrested yesterday in New York City and denied bail. So this really captured the attention of not just crypto Twitter yesterday, but all of Twitter and then some, just largely because it was such a crazy story filled with two pretty wild characters, right? This was a husband and wife team. We were looking at Heather Morgan, who also sort of moonlit as a rapper, a kind of silly persona that she had on the side in addition to her work as a tech entrepreneur and allegedly as a money launderer involved in the Bitfinex hack of 2016. So this is a crazy story with a lot of crazy ways we can take it. I'm going to kick this straight to Will for his initial thoughts on everything that happened yesterday, and it was a lot.
This story literally has it all. It has every single thing you want in a crypto story. This might be the story of the year. It's only February. Like, what a treat. Honestly, what a treat. So let's look back at these two characters. One is like a marketing influencer / rap artist. The other is some sort of tech entrepreneur who used to be at Y Combinator. Somehow they got a hold of these funds. It's clear that they were not the ones who hacked Bitfinex, but they somehow recovered the funds or were given the funds and started laundering them. Then the government comes in, sees that they've been using these funds or trying to pull them out and get cash out of this Bitcoin that's been sitting there. They're able to securely trace it. They found the funds in an iCloud account of some sort that was decrypted by the government. They probably had the information that these two had the keys and were just asked for it and were able to decrypt it. So there we have like a horrible privacy story around the hack. And then let's just look at the two characters right now. They're sitting in jail and everyone's just combing through their TikToks, combing through their rap battles. Pretty funky way to go out, honestly. Naomi, I want to throw this up to you, though. This might be the story of the year. It's only February. This might be the story of the year.
It's pretty huge, and I think it's a big lesson in privacy, as you've already alluded to, the fact that they had this spreadsheet that was in an iCloud account that had lists of all of these accounts and amounts in it. Like, it doesn't matter if this is encrypted, because encryption helps you from, protect you from mass surveillance, right? Because it's far too economically prohibitive for a government to have blanket surveillance and decrypt everyone's things. But if they wanted to, they could spend a ton of resources attacking a single file to decrypt it. So putting that stuff on iCloud is probably not a great thing that you could be doing. The other thing that I thought was interesting was just looking at these graphs in this report from the DOJ, where it dives into how they traced all of these funds. And there's a lot of battle on Twitter at the moment. Some people are saying, well, this doesn't prove that Monero is not private because it was only going in and out of Bitcoin, that they were able to link things together. Actually, I think it's a bit of both. So, when you're using this technology, you have to really understand how it works and where the failure models are. Just going into Monero, transferring it into that doesn't actually wipe the chain analytics of your transaction history. And it seems that that's what these people were relying on. They're kind of going in and out of funds. They're going in and out of dark market sites. Then they're putting money on exchanges and pseudonyms, all of this stuff. And it just goes to show you that at the end of the day, the way law enforcement is tracking this stuff, they're creating clusters. They're creating patterns of movement. They're saying, oh, that fund went there and that fund also went there later down the track. They're kind of joining these patterns together and they're figuring out a huge amount of stuff. So I think it's important that people realize where the weaknesses are. Maybe start to err towards things that have zero knowledge involved with it. There are a bunch of coins out there that use zero knowledge proofs, where chain analytics is literally like stopped on the spot there. So I think it's just important to kind of dig into all of this. And I think, really, Bitcoin doesn't come out a winner in all of this with all of the funds and the traceability there. Like, it's interesting because this traceability enabled law enforcement to potentially find bad guys, if that's what the case ends up determining. But it also allows law enforcement to dive into all of your funds as a private citizen who's probably done nothing wrong. So worthwhile keeping in mind where the privacy sits for all of these different coins. But Jen, I'll throw it to you.
I can't wait to see the Hollywood depiction of these two characters. There's just every element of a great Hollywood movie. And so aside from the spreadsheet with the 2,000 addresses and seed phrases, there were a few other tidbits that I thought were really hilarious while I was reading this story. So there was a file on the computer that was titled Passport Ideas that had information about obtaining passports on the dark web. And their lawyer said that the file was actually so that they could get passports so they could go to different countries to retrieve funds from accounts, not actually escape law enforcement. I thought that was really funny. And then there was a bag of cell phones under the bed that was labeled burner phones. Like, come on, guys. If we're going to launder this amount of money, let's not be so obvious about it.
The label makers is too much fun to pull out.
It's true.
The whole story is something we're going to be looking at for this entire year, going to be pulling on threads. I'm sure when we go to court with this, there's going to be some hilarious things get pulled out on deck. Zach, I'll throw it to you before we go to the next topic.
Yeah, last quick thought. And, I think you're seeing this across some of the commentary. I think in the long term, this could be really good for Bitcoin in establishing public trust of the officials who are looking to regulate it into the ground, right? The fact that this can happen that this tracing can happen and did happen is something that ultimately may engender trust among DC regulators, but it's certainly going to cut both ways, and it's certainly going to be a hot topic of debate going forward for a long time. All right, let's change gears. Who's taking it up next?
Taking it up, we're talking about Russia. So there was some FUD a little while back. We were wondering whether Russia is going to be banning crypto. We had the central bank is fighting with Treasury. There are all these different sectors in the Russian government that were at odds with each other in how they wanted to regulate cryptocurrency. And a ban was on the table. So the Russian government has instead now decided to regulate them. And Russia is the 11th largest economy. I think it's number 3 for mining of Bitcoin. And it's very interesting that they're deciding to go this regulation route rather than the outright ban. So a lot came out in this report from Russia. I'm going to throw it to you, Will, for your take on all of this. Is this good news? I mean, is crypto being absorbed into the Russian system? But is that good or bad?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because I've thought about it 2 ways. The first time I saw this headline, I was like, yes, like another country is adopting Bitcoin or allowing it to be at least a currency. They're not going to seize it. They're not going to ban it. They're not going to strangle it to death. They're just going to regulate it. That's a good thing right off the top. But then I thought about the United States and how we've just basically passively allowed people to invest in cryptocurrencies, passively allowed them to own Bitcoin. It's just property, right? At the end of the day, it's property. And of course, there's regulations and restrictions around it with SEC and ICOs and stuff like that. But for the most part, owning Bitcoin and owning crypto in the United States is not something that the government has jumped into yet. They're looking toward it in the future. And that made me think about this situation with Russia. If the United States went the path of Russia here and created systems for regulating crypto in this sort of way, there would be tremendous frustration and uproar. So I don't know if it's a good thing in the long run, because if there are departments in Russia, they're basically saying you can own this coin, you can't own this coin. You can do this with this coin, you can do this with this coin. You have to have a license to own this coin. You don't for this one. That's not a good thing in the long run, right? That's not what Bitcoin or crypto is about. So I do think that there needs to be a little better understanding of where this goes in the long term. Again, it's not a perfect correlation because the United States basically outlaws tons of different coins. So we're already in that step. But for the most part, you can buy Bitcoin on Cash App. It's pretty easy and you don't need to have some sort of license to be able to do it. Across the board, though, I think that there's some really nice points in this piece from Anna. Russia is now accepting it as a currency. India did that just a few weeks ago. And the United States seems to be just letting it passively be adopted across the board. That comes after China this last summer banned crypto basically in every single way. They banned mining, they banned trading, they banned peer-to-peer transactions for crypto. So we're kind of seeing this east-west divide, but I didn't suspect that Russia or India would fall on the side of the United States and on the side of the Western powers. So the political map is definitely getting a little tossed up in the air from what we're used to. Jen, I want to throw this one to you. What was your take on when you saw this headline last night?
Yeah, really similar to yours, Will. And it was interesting that they're looking at banks as to be the intermediary between retail investors who want to participate in crypto and all of the laws and taxes that are going to go on. So when I was reading this, I was like, okay, well, who's going to determine who gets a license and how are people going to know how to report their taxes? I think I'm frozen now, but can you still hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Okay, well, I will finish my thought, and then we can move on.
Just imagine.
So, I know. Just imagine me doing a lot of grand hand gestures. So it was really interesting to me that the banks are going to take on this responsibility in this proposal. And they'll be responsible for letting customers know how to file their taxes and how to operate within the law. But Will, I actually had a question for you. You were really bullish on India's news, and now it feels like you've changed your mind. And so I'm curious to know why.
I'm a nuanced man. I can change my opinion here and there. And I would say that I do think it matters that we take a look at the long run, and the small victories are big. Like that's a nice thing to have. But in the long run, the point of Bitcoin, the point of crypto is to allow people to have total financial sovereignty. And a lot of the rules that are being trot out by governments right now restrict the full breadth of freedom that crypto enables. It's probably just how it's going to be. Like you're not going to live in a situation or a scenario where everything is exactly as you want it. India has like a 30% tax on crypto that seems to be in line with what equities trade at or are taxed at in India. Russia obviously is going to get its pound of flesh in there as well. United States at some point with this new Biden administration regulation, everyone's kind of wondering what's going to happen there. They're going to get their pound of flesh. So I've changed my opinion a little bit. I've tempered it a little bit. I'll throw it up to Naomi.
Yeah, I just think that what you were talking about, Jen, about banks being intermediaries is important to dig into, because the way they're talking about this, they just want to use them as control mechanisms to verify users' identities, check transactions, get taxes from all of this. Because when it comes down to it, banks actually participate in a huge amount of money laundering. Banks in America get fined all the time for allowing all this money laundering. So it's not that the governments around the world are recognizing that banks can stop this. It's saying like, well, the banks will enable this. We can get a huge amount of money and fines from them. And we can also somewhat control the process by getting a bunch of information. They're not curtailing this behavior by adding these intermediaries. But I'll throw it to you, Zach, for the last words.
Yeah, I just wanted to shout out Naomi. I think, these are two sort of major FUD clouds that have evaporated with India and Russia now, and it's interesting to see how Bitcoin is going to respond going forward. All right, let's take a break. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back after the break, and we're going to ask you a question. Are you ready to enter the Shiba Lands? Shiba Metaverse? What is going on? Let's talk about it. Stick with us after the break. It's The Hash.
What's up, everybody? This is Spencer Dinwiddie.
And I'm Solo Cisse.
And this is New Money, brought to you by CoinDesk.
All I hear, go get the money. So I go get it. Hate means I do something right. So I'ma let him. Yeah, I'ma let him. Yeah, I'ma let him. I hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I'ma let him.
What we'll see is money not only being exchanged for this digital currency, but the frictionless movement across borders. Going to be able to flow as easy as a text message.
Staying true to yourself, right? Like, you've always been true to yourself.
I just want to share that with everybody. You could be yourself in full capacity.
It's our duty to take our visions and be fearless in our pursuit.
Be my most authentic self and show people that, look, I'm an athlete, and yes, I'm also a part of the LGBT community.
My goal is to have, my own NFT, my own entire IP, like my own everything.
How do you think blockchain and crypto impacts the way you think about it?
I think everyone has like some sort of like, so like, how'd you get into Bitcoin? It's like asking someone if they smoke. It's like, yo.
Embracing where the world is going. And when the whole world shut down, we saw just how important tech was.
It was more so of my style and the foods that I cooked that kind of pushed me. I wanted to live the lifestyle of an athlete or an artist while doing what I love.
Having that open mind, having that flexibility just allows you to be of so much more service to, youth or society in general.
Gamers, maybe it's because you guys just hustle different.
Anything you want to be great at, you got to put hours and hours in every single day.
And welcome back to The Hash. We're going to move over to Bitcoin mining land. Disclosure, I do work for a Bitcoin mining company, so heads up there. Let's talk about Compute North, which is a hosting provider in the industry. Basically, how the Bitcoin mining ecosystem works is you have machine manufacturers, you have hosting providers, and then you have people who basically buy the equipment and put them in these hosting providers. Compute North is one of those hosting providers. They have operations in Texas, Nebraska, and elsewhere, and they just raised a big sum of money to have some more deployments in the near future. So it's $385 million through a round, and they're also doing some debt financing in this as well. Basically, what they're going to be able to do is turn this money into new hosting space so then others can come in, put their machines on this rack, and then you just have more Bitcoin mining for the entire ecosystem. A lot of times, other providers out there like Marathon, which is a publicly traded Bitcoin mining firm out there, they use Compute North to mine Bitcoin. So they'll move their miners onto the shelves, and then boom, they can up their hash rate as well. Generally leads to an increase in the price of that stock. So pretty cool to see more money flowing into the system. Last year, obviously, with China banning Bitcoin mining, we saw a lot of people flock to the United States. To me, it just seems like this arms race isn't leaving. Like it's still a thing. Zach, I want to throw this up to you. $385 million. That's up there with some of the exchanges we've seen in terms of rounds. That's up there with a lot of the NFT stuff we've been seeing. What's your take on a number like this?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just going to bounce it right back to you. Like, what does it mean? Like, what does this mean in tangible terms relative to the industry? Like, you know it better than I. So, yeah, what's it mean, Will? What does it mean?
Tell us.
Could mean a lot of things. Oh, Jen, do you want to jump in there? No?
No, I want you to tell us what it means. No. I'm supporting Zach.
I thought I heard you say something. I think it means a few things. One is that Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin itself is just a very tough industry. It's very, very competitive, right? You're mining to beat out somebody else's chance of getting a Bitcoin. And so you're always having to increase the amount of hash rate in the network. That means you have to buy a lot of electrical equipment. You have to buy new hosting space. You have to buy more machines. It's very, very competitive compared to a lot of these other ecosystems where you don't really have to do all that in order to get a slice of the pie. So like the NFT marketplace, obviously right now, it's very big. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily very broad right now, but we have seen a lot of different NFTs pop off for whatever reason. They just do pop off. I don't have insights into why they do so well. But there's a lot of money there and they pop very easily, it seems. That's compared to some of the other places in the entire crypto industry where you have to put in a lot of work and boots on the ground in order to get things higher. Like you have to get these higher valuations. So that's normally what I think about when I see these things. I also like to compare it to exchanges. So FTX has done a lot of big rounds this year, and this one's smaller than the rounds FTX has done, but I wouldn't say it's smaller by like multiples, right? It's only by a few $100 million compared to like a $10 million seed round. It's still a lot of money. And I think it's just interesting to see how money flows into exchanges so easily and money is flowing into Bitcoin mining in this at almost a similar pace, even though people are normally interfacing with exchanges more than they are with Bitcoin miners. Naomi, I want to throw this one up to you though, bounce it up.
Yeah, I guess I have a question because this is talking specifically about US-based data centers saying that they're delivering sustainable, cost-effective computing, and this is all of infrastructure for blockchain, cryptocurrency mining, distributed computing space. But this is a mining company, so this isn't them building more mining centers in the US. This is about broader data centers, correct?
They normally, all these press releases always say data centers, but they're just Bitcoin mining centers. I don't really know why the parlance is like that. Sometimes they do both. So like Hut 8 is a Canadian miner, and they do like general computation as well on the side. But for the most part, it's always Bitcoin mining, and they just say data provider for whatever reason. Maybe it's good for their stock. I don't know.
Yeah, it's strange, but it's also interesting to see more and more mining companies move to the US. I mean, we're looking at June 2021. Look at the percentage of miners in China; they were at 34%. That's where America is now. We're at 35%. Well, actually, this was August 2021 that we were at 35%. I presume we're a lot higher. What is the current statistic for how much mining is happening in the US right now? Will, do you have an idea of that?
It's around 30% is the numbers I've seen. So those numbers are always really difficult to gauge. But yeah, it's like 30% there. Russia's around 30%. Kazakhstan's around 20%. So it's a lot more distributed than it used to be, right? And back in May, it was like 60% in China.
Yeah, no, and the start of back in 2019, we're talking 75% China. So it really has distributed across the whole world, which is very interesting. I wonder whether this trajectory of more and more people coming to the US is actually creating a similar problem where we may get too much of a concentration here in the United States, and especially as places like Kazakhstan shut down the internet and their power, and places that are becoming a hub, becoming increasingly hostile towards cryptocurrency and mining. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that plays out and whether this is ever going to play out or whether it's just going to be constantly dynamic and it'll just keep moving from place to place, which seems likely actually. But Zach, I'll throw it to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, crypto mining industry is like kind of boring, kind of slow and steady, but becoming just bigger and bigger, and especially in North America, given the China crackdown. So it's interesting to see this. That's not saying anything new and or particularly novel, but that's all I got. I know Jen has her hand up, so I want to toss it straight to her.
Yeah, I also have a question for you, Will. This has really turned into like a mining AMA for you. But as we see more miners come to the US, do you think that that's going to raise red flags for regulators as they look to create regulation and define what all of this means for the crypto industry in the US and North America?
Yeah, we're already seeing that. Elizabeth Warren, senator up in Massachusetts, sent a letter to a bunch of public Bitcoin mining firms the other week asking for disclosures of the energy consumption. I think we talked about that in the hash, actually. I think it's going to happen more and more often. With exchanges, you're going to see them kind of shut down on like the token side, or they're going to be like money laundering. And on the flip side, you're going to see a lot of consumer protection around energy consumption or electrical rates. It's just what the government's going to do. They're going to try to step in and regulate this. And to my understanding, that's where it's going to be. It's going to be in those two areas, I think, just going forward. But we'll flip it over to you for a little Shiba Inu talk, right? It's been a while since we talked about the dog token.
It's been a while. I'm no longer frozen and we're going to the metaverse. So Shiba Inu is entering the metaverse. Developers said that the protocol would soon offer plots of virtual land in a metaverse that they have not yet disclosed. On the news, leash and SHIB tokens jumped as much as 40%. So it's been a while since we spoke about this, the little meme that could, and it just seems that the developers are continuing to truck on. I think when we first spoke about Shiba Inu, some of us on this panel maybe, or some of our audience members thought that it would just fizzle away like so many other tokens. And here we are, they're building virtual land in a metaverse. So Zach, I'm going to toss this off to you. I know you love a good meme. What did you think of this story?
Yeah, I mean, like it doesn't really answer the question as to whether or not Shiba Inu is a quote unquote real project or is just really capable at identifying the next big thing and positioning itself in the midst of that next big thing, right? Like we saw that, like, Shiba Swap was like, okay, we're doing DeFi now. Okay, here, let's do some metaverse now. I think it kind of does indicate that there's momentum to do actual stuff behind this project, which I think is cool if it can have the legs to actually do actual things. But the jury is still out as to whether or not it's riding narratives or actually building for a future in which these things are widely used. And I don't know. It's one of those, like, it's one of those time will tell things. But it's interesting to see that they continue to kind of pick the next big thing that's emerging in the crypto narrative, and I think that's what we're seeing here. But yeah, I mean, yeah, metaverse, man, it's everywhere. That metaverse just keeps on coming. But yeah, I'll throw this into Naomi.
I don't have much to add to this. I feel bad dismissing for so long a lot of these meme ecosystems. I feel like I need to explore them because we're starting to get more robust, complete economies rather than just single tokens. I mean, tokens are flash in the pan. We see them go up and down. But when you start seeing like layer 2s and all these other tokens built on a blockchain for a meme coin, that starts to get a little more meaty, in my opinion, and you start to actually build out a more robust economy. There's no saying whether the economy will last, but it definitely gets more interesting. So the fact that they've now got like Leash token, which is some sort of metaverse thing with, based on Shiba Inu, I definitely feel remiss in my research duties. So I'll be diving into this world a little more. But Jen, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, so for this, like the more Leash token you hold, the more opportunity you have to own this virtual land in the metaverse. And so, I mean, like Zach said, I think there are a lot of news, a lot of headlines, a lot of talk about what's going to be built, and we'll see what is actually built. But Zach, I want to come back to what you said. You said, I want to ask you a question, actually. What defines a real project when everything is so new and most things to do with the metaverse are still being built?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I don't have a clear answer. I think there are metrics to indicate whether things are being used outside of, just token number go up. But it's something that the industry still doesn't really have a clear answer for, right? There's projects that get disparaged and there's projects that are seen as real. And some of that has to do with sentiment and whether or not personally, like, you have an interest or an aptitude for using various services. But it's something that, you like is going to be something that we need to think about more, right? I think, like, to what Naomi's point is, right? Like, we don't want to be dismissive of these meme coin communities because, hey, they could be the next big thing. And so I think in the early innings of these movements, it's really interesting and difficult to parse out what's what and what's hype. And ultimately, maybe the two things like aren't as separable as we would hope that they would be. So anyway, those are some thoughts that don't make a ton of sense. But Will, do you have anything else on Shiba Lands?
No, to me, it's just another dog token pumping, and then we'll be forgotten the memories later on. So it's all good.
All right.
We should talk about
Debbie Downer over there.
It's okay.
I just think
you get
that's how it is.
You get the highs and the lows here in the hash. All right, this just in beep, 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 from CoinDesk Sports Desk. This is not breaking news, by the way, but we sort of teased that there was a hunch as to who the Terra Lunatics were trying to sponsor, a major U.S. sports team. And we had a hunch that it was an MLB team. That's all I would say at the time. That hunch appears to have been verified this morning. There was some reporting that was done yesterday that sort of put the pieces together, the internet clues as to who was behind this partnership. And then later this morning, the Washington Nationals announced that they were working with Terra both on a branding activation and also potentially, which I think is a big story, the potential to accept the algorithmic UST stablecoin at the ballpark as soon as next year. So that's what's also being explored. Interesting news. Maybe we'll talk about it later, but that's all for today.
You called it.
Shout out Danny. Shout out Danny Nelson.
It was mostly just reporting and reading and figuring it out and matching one clue to the next. And
shout out Zach Seward. Right. Shout out
Danny. Shout out Danny Nelson. All right. Anyway, shout out to Teresa. Shout out Control. Shout out everybody.
Control.
Shout out Control. All right. Thanks, everybody. That was the hash for today. We'll be back tomorrow, and we'll see you then. I'm Zach Seward. That's Naomi Brockwell. We got Jen Sanasi, and we have Will Foxley. We're the hash. We're on CoinDesk TV. Go read some stuff on the internet, and have a great day. Bye.